Many have called the best 8 minutes of boxing ever. He is the undisputed middleweight champion of the world. Please welcome marvelous Marvin Hagler.
In the glittering world of boxing, where legends rise with every blow and fall with the crushing weight of expectation, few names ever carried the sheer gravity of Marvin Hagler, a man so relentless, so dominant, and so resolutely focused that he legally changed his name to Marvelous just to make the world say what he had always known: he wasn't just great, he was spectacular. But behind the bravado, behind the sculpted muscles and the unyielding eyes that stared down every opponent, behind the epic wars inside the ring that defined the 1980s middleweight era, there was a man who struggled quietly with wounds that had nothing to do with fists or titles. A man whose tragic end shocked the boxing world and left behind more questions than answers. Born in Newark, New Jersey, in 1954, Marvin Hagler's early life was defined by hardship. After the Newark riots in 1967, his family moved to Brockton, Massachusetts, where Marvin's hunger for something greater took root. Inspired by local legends like Rocky Marciano, Hagler entered the boxing world not with fanfare, but with a chip on his shoulder and fire in his chest. For years, he was avoided, ducked, denied title shots simply because he was too dangerous. Promoters and champions saw the risk, but not the reward. He was too tough, too relentless, and came without the crowd-pulling charm of other stars. But when he finally got his shot, when he stood across the ring from Alan Minter in 1980 and fought through a hostile London crowd throwing beer bottles and insults, Hagler seized the WBA and WBC middleweight titles with such ferocity that even his doubters had to bow. It was a reign unlike any other. From 1980 to 1987, Hagler was the undisputed middleweight champion of the world, defending his title 12 times, defeating legends like Roberto Duran, John Mugabe, and in perhaps the most brutal 3 rounds in boxing history, Thomas Hitman Hearst. That fight in 1985, dubbed The War, was an explosion of violence, skill, and raw willpowers. Skill and raw willpowers cementing Hagler as one of the toughest fighters the sport had ever seen. But the tragedy of Marvin Hagler wasn't in the ring, was in how the world treated him when he stepped out of it. After years of giving everything to boxing, after becoming the undisputed king, it was one single night in 1987 that changed everything. Hagler stepped into the ring with Sugar Ray Leonard, a fight years in the making. Leonard, the flashy Olympic gold medalist and media darling, was returning from retirement and managed to negotiate the terms heavily in his favor: larger ring, lighter gloves, and a shorter fight. Still, Hagler accepted, eager to prove once more that grit triumphed over glamour. What followed was a controversial 12-round decision, one that remains hotly debated to this day. Many believed Hagler won. Others praised Leonard's tactics. But the scorecards gave the fight to Leonard by a split decision. For Hagler, it was more than a loss, it was a betrayal. The man who had fought tooth and nail for recognition, who had built his career with sweat and sacrifice, felt the sport had turned its back on him when he needed it most. Bitter, heartbroken, and disgusted, Hagler walked away from boxing at the age of 33. He never fought again. He never begged for a rematch. He simply vanished. He moved to Italy, started acting in films, and lived quietly, away from the fame and media that had once consumed him. While other boxers clung to comebacks and the spotlight, Hagler remained firm. "I didn't lose the fight," he once said, "I lost the decision." But the real tragedy came later on March 13, 2021, when news broke that Marvin Hagler had died suddenly at the age of 66. The announcement came from his wife Kay, who wrote on social media that Hagler had passed away unexpectedly at their home. In New Hampshire, fans were stunned. Fellow fighters were shaken. The boxing world mourned deeply. And then, the rumors began. Just hours before his death, fellow boxer Thomas Hearns had posted that Hagler was in the ICU after experiencing side effects from a COVID-19 vaccine. The post went viral, spawning conspiracy theories and igniting online battles about what truly happened. But Hagler's family quickly moved to shut down the speculation. His wife later clarified that he had died of natural causes, that his death was peaceful, and that using his name to push agendas was disrespectful. Still, the whirlwind of misinformation that followed only deepened the pain. Marvin Hagler, who had spent his life controlling the narrative inside the ring, suddenly had no control over how the world remembered his final moments. The tragedy wasn't just in how he died, but how he was treated after, forgotten by some, ignored by the media until his passing, and then quickly swept into the noise of controversy. He deserved better. This was the man who never ducked a fight, who trained in freezing winters in Cape Cod, who shaved his head to avoid excuses from opponents claiming headbutts. He was the working man's champion, the embodiment of dedication, and yet, he left this world quietly, his legacy known deeply to fans, but unfamiliar to many outside the boxing world. Marvin Hagler never got the Hollywood treatment like some of his contemporaries. He wasn't adorned in glitz or chased by cameras. He remained, to the very end, a man of pride, dignity, and silence. He had given boxing his soul and walked away. With scars no gold belt could ever heal. The heartbreaking part is that he carried that pain alone. He didn't want sympathy. He wanted respect, and in a world obsessed with flash over substance, Marvin had always chosen the harder road. But his legacy is eternal. Fighters today still watch his tapes, trying to understand how a man could fight with such fury and yet remain so composed. Commentators still speak of his jab, his chin, his ability to cut off the ring like a machine. But more than anything, they remember his resolve, the unbreakable belief that if you worked hard enough, stayed true to yourself, and refused to quit, you could carve your name into history without anyone's permission. Marvin "Marvelous" Hagler did just that. And though his story ended too soon, and though it ended in shadows and silence, the echo of his greatness continues to thunder through time. He was the champion who never gave up, not even when the world gave up on him. His tragedy is not just in his death but in the way he was robbed of the justice, recognition, and celebration he deserved while he was still here. Rest in peace, Marvelous Marvin. The ring is quieter without you, but your spirit still fights on.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.